Good evening from Israel, and welcome to Voices of Valor, a first-ever joint event by ILTV News, Ynet Global, and Israel Plus. This year, Israel's Memorial and Independence Days feel different. We are now a year and a half into a war, with dozens of hostages still held by Hamas and Israeli soldiers fighting on multiple fronts. Since October 7, 2023, we've lost more than 1,500 people. We remember them alongside the tens of thousands who gave their lives over the last 77 years so that the Jewish people could live safely in our homeland. And yet, even in this dark chapter, we must find moments to celebrate. As John Pollan, the father of murdered American-Israeli hostage Hersh Goldberg Pollan, told me while preparing for this event, you cannot live in a state of despair. Even when things are heavy, we must find a reason, find moments to celebrate. Perhaps this year, after so much loss, we need to celebrate even more fiercely, to be even more grateful for the Jewish state that we call home, despite its flaws, despite its challenges. So without further ado, let's begin this powerful evening together. Let's start out with a message from Israeli President Isaac Herzog.
Dear sisters and brothers from all over the world, as we in Israel are celebrating 77 years of independence, it's a moment to reflect and rejoice. We are reflecting indeed because a huge burden of pain and agony has been given to us since October 7th, and we are dealing with it on a daily basis, being attacked from 7 different frontiers by a terrible empire of evil emanating from Tehran, taking hostage of our brothers and sisters, 59 of them still held in the dungeons of Gaza. We call the international community and all people of sanity and humanity to rise up and demand their immediate release, all of them, until the last one of them. We in Israel care about the Jewish communities abroad. We care and understand the challenges that are facing Jewish communities abroad, and that is why we deliver on all platforms, including this one, our message of fraternity, of love, of Ahavat Israel to all of you. Hoping to see you here and join hands together in fighting and combating anti-Semitism, hate, and promoting the great unity that this nation, our nation, the Jewish nation, deserves. So from the President's residence in Jerusalem, we say to all of you, Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach, Happy Independence Day, and may we go together from strength to strength, seeing our hostages immediately back home, bringing forward the spirit of peace and change in our region, and of course, uniting as a nation to move forward.
Our first panel takes us back to October 7th, 2023, the fateful day when terrorists from Gaza infiltrated our country, murdering, raping, and pillaging our communities. But even on that darkest of days, the light of a few brave citizens shone through. Today, you will meet 3 of them. Major General Noam Tibon, who raced an hour and a half from Tel Aviv to rescue his son Amir's family and ended up saving countless others along the way. Oz Davidian, a simple farmer who drove his car 15 times under terrorist fire into the Nova Music Festival, rescuing 120 Israelis. And Major General Ramo Alzuel, a Bedouin Israeli police officer, who managed to save hundreds of people from the massacre at Nova. Their incredible stories of courage and heroism will be brought to life in a special interview conducted by ILTV anchor Lidar Grave-Lazi.
So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. So each of you has an incredible, extraordinary story from October 7th of courage, of heroism. And I know we don't have much time, but I would love if you could all briefly share with us your story. So General Tibon, let's start with you.
First of all, it is really a pleasure to be here with 2 of my personal heroes from October 7, people who really, with their hands, and with their courage, saved so many lives. I started the day in Tel Aviv beach. 6:30, I heard the sirens. I continued to swim. 7:15, I entered my vehicle, and I got a WhatsApp text from my son Amir that there are terrorists near my house in Kibbutz Nahal Oz, which is on the border of Gaza. Since that minute, I was on a journey, but more on a mission to rescue my family, Amir, Miri, and my two granddaughters, Galia and Carmel. I took my pistol. My wife, Gali, drove our Jeep, and basically we went to a journey to the south, near Kibbutz Nir Am. We saved Bar and Lior, who escaped from the Nova Festival and were in the middle of a battle. Then we had to bypass all kind of police checkpoints all the way to Nahal Oz. I was at the entrance of Kibbutz Nahal Oz around noon when I fell into a battle of the first force of Maglan unit that was ambushed by Nukhba terrorists. I jumped to help them, and basically 3 of them were already killed. And I had to take the rifle of one of them, Chen Buchris, and to fight on my life. I killed one terrorist, I injured another one or killed him. And then when the road was open, it was already noon, there was a badly wounded soldier by the name of Yedidia from Jerusalem. And this was a moral decision, because I knew if I would leave him there, he will die. So I evacuated him back to my wife, and she took him and other 2 wounded soldiers to the hospital and saved their life. And basically I met a friend, General Israel Ziv, who took me back to Nahal Oz, and I was with the brave soldiers of Maglan and Seyeret Givati. I was clearing the kibbutz from the terrorists. We killed more than 30 terrorists. And the great moment of my life was around 4 p.m. when I saw my son's house. I went to the safe room window. I knocked on the window and I said, "Amir, it's dead." And then I heard my granddaughter Galia said, "Sababa, Grandpa is here." And if I'm so proud on that day that even though I was under huge pressure to save my own family, everyone who I met, I saved his life. Bar and Lior, the wounded soldiers, and more than 400 people from Kibbutz Nahal Oz.
An incredible, just incredible story. Thank you for sharing with us. Attorney Davidian, I'd like to hear your story now.
קודם כל זה כבוד גדול להיות לצידו של האלוף נועם טיבון, גיבור ישראל, על ההצלה שלו והלחימה שלו ביום הזה, ועם השוטר רמו, על הצלת החיים. ב-7 באוקטובר גם אני קיבלתי הודעה מאחותי על מתקפה של מחבלים. יצאתי לשטח עם הטנדר שלי, והגעתי לשטח המסיבה. בדרך ראיתי המון גופות, ושמעתי ירי ופיצוצים. תוך כדי כניסה לתוך שטח המסיבה, הוספתי את הילדים, וביציאה חזרה מהשטח עשיתי תמונת סלפי למזכרת, כי אולי נהרג, ונתתי להם להתקשר מהטלפון שלי הביתה, וככה בעצם היה להם את מספר הטלפון שלי, ואחר כך הם שלחו לי מיקומים של חברים שלהם שמתחבאים, ובהמשך החברים שלהם שלחו לי את המיקומים, וככה בעצם עשיתי את הנסיעות מהבוקר עד 5:20 בערב, בהצלה של אנשים חיים. נתקלתי במחבלים כמה פעמים שירו עליי, זה מתועד בסרטוני המצלמות הרכב, ואפשר לראות את זה בסרט שעשו, הרשימה של עוז. כשאני פשוט מדבר איתם, ואני חושב שזה חיילים חופשים שלנו, וכשאני מבין שזה מחבלים, אני פשוט נותן גז ובורח בין המכוניות הבוערות, ובדרך נס הכדורים לא פוגעים בי, וככה במהלך כל היום, מהבוקר ועד אחר הצהריים, אני מוציא חיים, ולקראת הערב שאני לא מוצא כבר חיים, אני אוסף גופות.
Oz, yes, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And Sergeant Major Remo, we'd love to hear your story as well.
You know, in the police force, you can get extra money if you go guard a football game or a festival like the Nova or a fixed road at night. And in 5.5 years that I'm in the police as investigator, I never did it. The 7th October was the first time for me. When I prepare myself to get to the Nova party, 6:22 I arrive to the Nova party, 6:28 it all start, thousands of rockets. We prepared ourselves to change with the night shift. We were only 36 cab from the night shift and from the morning shift. And around 6:56, I'm making inside the area of the Nova party a record, and I'm joking with my detective. I'm telling him in Arabic Hebrew, "Es benmut לפחות שאין לנו תיעוד." If we die, at least we have a record. In that time, we didn't know what's going on. Then, around 7:03, one of the teenagers ran to our direction and yelling that his friend was shot next to him. And from there, we realized that the terrorists are inside Israel. In some point, around 8, we try to hold the terrorists back as much as we can and start to yell to everyone to run to the east, to the open field, to the direction of the sun. In some point, I find myself alone with civilians, teenagers from the Nova party, and the first thing I was looking for was a car. I found a car, and for 3 hours, I go in, I go out, I go in, I go out. Each time I go in, I don't know if I will get out alive, but as a policeman, I will do my duty, protect and serve, even if the chances are very low. I will do my best. On 11 o'clock, I meet another policeman at the greenhouse where I evacuate all the teenagers. And I told him to come with me. He is also a very brave one. He didn't think twice. He also has family. He didn't think twice. It was a long 15 hours of fighting and rescuing.
Incredible, just incredible stories. And, you know, General Tibon, turning back to you, I mean, you know, what drives a person to perform such an act of heroism, of courage? Was it, you know, instinct, something else, training perhaps? You know, did you have a moment to think about what you were doing, or did you just act?
You know, I did my duty as a father and a grandfather. And from the first minute, I understood that, you know, if I will not do it, nobody will do it. And I was on a military mission, and I used all the training, all my experience, but also all my instincts on that day to, you know, to survive in this chaos and to fulfill my mission, to rescue my family and to rescue everyone else who I met. And, you know, on that day when the whole chain of command of the IDF collapsed and the government was not functioning, nothing was working. There were stars of light, like those two gentlemen who, you know, risked their life in order to save other people's life. And I couldn't care less about my own life. I was so focused to protect my family. And I would like to add something about, you know, Remo is Israeli Bedouin. And they live nearby, just like, you know, us. The people from this region, they were the stars who saved so many lives, and so many Bedouin people came and helped, and I salute all of them.
So, Attorney Davidian, you know, I want to ask as well, you kept driving back into the Nova Festival, I think 15 times, in and out. I mean, knowing that terrorists were everywhere, I mean, what compelled you to do that?
אז קודם כל, לא ראיתי כוחות, והיה המון מחבלים, המון ירי, ואני יודע שיש המון ילדים שמתחבאים. היו גיבורים שנהרגו, והיו גיבורים כמו אלוף טיבון ורמו שחילצו ועשו. וכל פעם כשאני מוציא קבוצת ילדים חיה, אני נוסע ברכב ואני רואה אותם מחייכים ושמחים. אני מוריד אותם ואני מקבל עוד מיקום, ואני מבין שאין מישהו שיוציא אותם. ובעצם ככה אני חוזר פעם אחרי פעם בשביל להוציא את הילדים. וכל פעם שאני מגיע לשם ומחפש, אני רוב הזמן לבד. לבד, ואין מי שיוציא אותם, ואני יודע שאם אני לא מוציא אותם, הם פשוט לא יחיו. קרה לי שהגעתי למקומות שהקבוצות היו גדולות יותר, ועד שהגעתי הם הצטמצמו, או שהגעתי וכבר הם לא היו חיים שם. זה קרה, ולכן זה מה שדרבן אותי להמשיך כל היום לחזור פעם אחרי פעם, למרות ההתקלות עם המחבלים. היה לי גם איזשהו יתרון שאני מכיר את השטח, אני מכיר את המקום, אני ידעתי איך לתמרן בתוך הוודיות, בתוך השטח, לנסוע ולהתחמק.
Incredible. And you know, Sergeant Major Remo, as General Tibon mentioned, you are from the Bedouin community.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you as well, you also kept going back and forth, as you mentioned. I mean, what compelled you to do that?
First of all, education from home. My father and my mother raised me to help people and to take care. And also as a policeman, I swear to protect and serve. And you don't have time to think, you only act. Even my wife from 10 o'clock called me, she was crying on the phone, begging me to come home. I told her I cannot come. She then told me something that broke my heart, your children waiting for you. I told her that I'm on a mission, but I promise I will come back, and I make my promise.
Happy that you were able to fulfill your promise to your wife. You know, and this year, I mean, Israel is turning 77 years old. I could continue talking with you gentlemen all day, but we're almost out of time. And so I do want to just ask each of you, General Tibon, we'll start with you. What would you like to wish the State of Israel on its 77th birthday?
Before the wish, I would like to say something. What you see here around this table is the Israeli DNA. You don't leave any wounds behind. If you see somebody who needs help, you give him a hand. This is the Israeli DNA, and that's why I so appreciate what they did on that day, and others who came from all over Israel. I have only one wish for the 77th anniversary of the State of Israel, that all the hostages will be back home with their family. This is my only wish. And only this can start the healing of the open wounds since October 7.
Absolutely. And same question.
הדבר הראשון שאני מאחל לכולנו, כמדינה, כעם, כבני אדם, זה קודם כל להחזיר את החטופים. הם שנה וחצי במנהרות, ואנחנו לא יודעים מה מצבם וכמה הם סובלים. אז הדבר הראשון והחשוב הוא שכולם יחזרו הביתה בשלום. והדבר הנוסף הוא שאנחנו מדינה של גיבורים, אנחנו עם של גיבורים. לצערי, האחדות שלנו התגלתה בימים הקשים, ולכן אנחנו צריכים להמשיך לאהוב אחד את השני, ולעשות כל מה שאפשר בשביל להיות מאוחדים, כי רק ביחד אנחנו חזקים.
Same question.
Like them, I wish that all hostages will come back home, safe to their families. And, you know, as you saw on the 7th October, it doesn't matter if you're a Jew, a Muslim, a Christian, or a Druze. Everyone fights together, shoulder to shoulder, as one unit, one team, one group, one family, against that pure terror. And we need to stay together. We are strong, but together we are stronger.
Absolutely. Together, we are stronger. Gentlemen, Israeli heroes who've joined us today, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and sharing your stories.
Israel's leadership, both in the Knesset and the government, has been grappling with the gravity of the situation on the ground. While opinions differ on how well they've handled the crisis, some ministers have remained steadfast, working tirelessly to ensure when this war finally ends, Israel will be standing on solid ground. I had the privilege of speaking with one of those leaders ahead of this event, Economy and Industry Minister Nir Barkat. Let's take a look.
So, Minister Barkat, Israel's economy has really taken a hit over the last 18 months, given the war and the instability and uncertainty, obviously, that comes with that. Where do we stand today, and what are your immediate priorities as Minister of the Economy?
Just 2 weeks ago, OECD came here and they showed us the report of the last 2 years. And they're astonished as to the resilience of the Israeli economy during war. The interest around the world in Israel's economy is huge. We see high interest from the Far East, from India, and all of Far East, of course, in America. The friendly relationship Israel has now with the United States and the challenges we have, I believe that you're going to see a big spike in growth as we exit the war. We're still at war. We still have challenges. We have not yet returned all of our hostages. We need to do that. We need to take Hamas apart. We have to make sure Iran does not have nuclear capabilities. But I think the world sees the big opportunity, and the world wants to do business with Israel. So I'm very optimistic when I look into the future.
And it's been interesting because one of the things that we've seen is that our Israeli business leaders and tech leaders have really been resilient throughout the war. They've continued to produce and deliver despite the numbers that are in reserves or that are dealing with some of the silent boycott issues that we've spoken about before. What lessons do you take from that, and what will you use and leverage from what we've seen of those business people going forward?
Well, I was there, mind you, when I was an high-tech entrepreneur before public service. The resilience is not just people, it's also in companies. So when the reservists go to serve and defend our borders, people cover for each other. And I think that all the businesses understand, especially the ones that do export, especially services and trade, understand the importance to maintain the economy open, to have open borders, and to make sure that our companies are successful through the process.
Now, Minister, what policies do you see as critical to implement at the current time in order to achieve both our economic stability, but also our stability in terms of international relations, which, despite the numbers that you referenced and the strength that you expect, have certainly suffered as a result of the war?
I think it's right now we are negotiating with the Americans, with the United States, the whole restructuring of the trade agreements. There's no doubt in my mind we will get along well with the Americans. We have many other countries very interested. The Indians are very interested. At the Far East, you have more and more countries, the Philippines, Thailand, Japan, and even Britain wants to upgrade the free trade agreement we have with them. So I think the key is to be open to international business and make sure we have free flow of import and export. We just finished what's good for Europe is good for Israel. It's now in the process. We're now starting what's good for the United States is good for Israel, and to eliminate all the barriers that we have doing trade around the world. And internally, it's investing and helping growth. We have created within my office a growth initiative focusing on how to do more and more export, how to bring more people to the tech world. Naturally, it's higher wages, and it's how to collaborate with foreign employees on low-skilled labor that we need to expand. All these challenges are on the table. We are in the right direction. When you look at the numbers, you see the numbers are there. The economy did better than we expected throughout the war.
So, Minister, last time that we spoke, I remember you referencing that we needed to bring in some tens of thousands of foreign workers to replace the Palestinians who are no longer receiving permits to enter the country, certainly not from Gaza, but also from the West Bank. Where are we halting with that? Have we been able to replace those workers and be able to recalibrate the industries that are most impacted?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the bigger picture, today we do about $150 billion export a year. Our goal should be $1 trillion in 15 to 20 years. And in order to do that, you need to upgrade the quality, the quality of the jobs, okay, and upgrade to have more qualified jobs for Israelis, and complement that with an array of unskilled labor from abroad. And there's numerous places we could do that. I'm still unhappy with the number of foreign employees we bring. We need to bring 150,000 employees.
Now, you mentioned Iran and the fact that Iran cannot achieve nuclear capabilities. Do you believe that a nuclear deal is the right thing for Israel? And if a deal like that would fail, do you believe Israel is ready to attack Iran?
There's no change in the goal. The goal must be to make sure Iran that wants to create a bomb in order to use it against Israel. That's why they want to create a bomb. And we believe them. We have to make sure they never have those capabilities. And the United States agrees with us. They agree with the goals. There's no change in the goals. The dynamics of negotiations, if we could get those goals without an attack in Iran, possibly, well, then we got the goals. The goal is the main issue.
Now, Minister Barkat, you mentioned the word unity. And over the past 18 months, we have certainly seen protests in the streets by the hostage families and others. Do you believe that the war ultimately, which looked like it was bringing Israelis together, accomplished at least that goal? Or do you believe that today we are further apart?
You know, I met the soldiers in the front lines going into Gaza. They put everything aside and, like great brothers, they collaborated in the war. And the soldiers are telling us, please, we want to make sure that as we are united in the front fighting for the future of the state of Israel, for the future of our children and grandchildren, they want to see the same back home. And I personally will always do everything I can to focus on the common denominator. When I was mayor of Jerusalem for 10 years, I focused on the common denominator. And yeah, there are differences all the time. That's fine. We know how to master them and manage them in a way that enables us to focus on the big challenges Israel has. Israel could do a better job in uniting ourselves, our brothers and sisters. It starts with the language we use. You know, they say that smart things are said in a calm way rather than shouting about it. And I think that we could do a better job, all of us as individuals and us as a whole, to focus on the unity, because it is key to our success.
Do you feel that we need a change in leadership in order to ultimately achieve that unity?
It's not about the specific people here or there. The unity comes from the bottom. It comes from the people. Of course, as leaders, we must all seek to have more unity. And every person in the country knows what he can do to have better unity.
Now, it's very hard to talk about a vision for the future. You mentioned us bringing back, our economy after the war. But as we've brought up many times, we still have these 59 hostages there. We're still fighting in Gaza 18 months later. How do you balance the tragedy and the challenge of living the war and still being able to envision a future?
We have no choice. We have no choice but with one arm, fight and make sure that the terrorist, the jihadi terrorist, that the atrocities they committed October 7 and what they want to do in the future, we have no choice but to fight and win them. And on the other hand, we have no choice but to be successful in doing business and in expanding our economy. We are committed to do the two things simultaneously. Because if, God forbid, we just do one of them, our future is not going to be as good as we want.
Now, this conference is called Voices of Valor, and what we're doing is we're focusing on the soldiers who have fought in the war, the hostages who were released and managed to maintain their sanity to some extent, despite the atrocities we know they went through, and on all of the members of society who have really stood up for the state of Israel. Minister Barkat, in your estimate, what is a national hero today? How do you define that?
Oh, there's so many heroes that I've seen. Starting from, in Ukraine, 4 million people left Ukraine in the war. This war, 100,000 warriors came from all over the world to fight for Israel's future. They're heroes. And then you saw the ones protecting with their lives, protecting between civilians and the terrorists, the horrors of October 7 and later. So many reservists that left everything and spent hundreds of days fighting and defending our country. But the women that stayed back home and kept house and the businesses together, and so many volunteers around the world, around the country that came, and many, many Jews around the world that came and helped Israel. There's so many heroes, they're all heroes. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. You see so many people that I admire the people of Israel, the Jewish people, and I admire the commitment of the soldiers. They're all my heroes, all the soldiers, especially the reservists, and of course, unfortunately, especially the ones that did not return home.
As we approach Independence Day, what does it mean to be independent in our Jewish state, and what is the message that you want to send to the people of Israel?
Our grandparents and their grandparents dreamt of coming back home to the land of Israel. So Jews all over the world long to go back home. We are so fortunate. I was born into it, but my parents saw Israel transforming to become an independent state. we must not take it for granted. So our history shows that it's precious to have an independent state, and we will do everything we can to protect it and to build it and to demonstrate to the world that we can be the lighthouse to the rest of the world. I am a total believer in our future. My girls, my grandgirls, the future is here in the country, and I honestly believe there's no better place for us to live around the world. It's so precious. We will do everything we can to protect the independent state of Israel, the only Jewish state in the world.
Minister Barkat, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you very much.
Our next interview is with Democrats Chairman MK Yair Golan, a career military officer. He was interviewed ahead of the event by ILTV anchor Lidar Grave-Lazi.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So today we are honoring Israel's fallen soldiers and of course celebrating the state's 77th birthday at a time when, as of this recording, we still have 59 hostages in Hamas captivity. So what message would you like to convey to the hostage families and to the people of Israel on this occasion?
I think that right now the Israeli solidarity is the most important issue concerning our destiny. This ability to live with each other and to care each other. And therefore, I consider the lives of these 59 persons as the most crucial element concerning our ability to live with each other. And we should not give up it. We should not say, all right, this is a matter of time and maybe it will take years. No, not at all. We need to bring them back home right now.
You know, you placed the blame squarely on the current government, but we should, of course, acknowledge Hamas's role in all of this. Of course, they've rejected most of the proposals put forward by Israel and the United States.
Well, I can tell you that for sure, we could have a comprehensive hostages deal probably in last May. And since then, more and more opportunities. Unfortunately, this government intentionally failed all these attempts to free the hostages. Why? Because of political considerations. Because we cannot free them without stopping the war. And by stopping the war, yes, we will live with Hamas for the next near future. So what? If we are a proud and strong nation, we should make priorities.
Do you think there is an alternative to Hamas?
Yes, of course, there is an alternative. It should be a genuine Palestinian entity, no doubt, but we can bring the whole area and the whole region to support this initiative. I can tell you that I had a very interesting conversation with the Emirati Prime Minister. They're willing to invest in it. I'm quite sure that Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, maybe Morocco, want to be part of in the process of building this alternative to Hamas.
So you mentioned the region, and I want to discuss one of the greatest threats to Israel in the region, and that, of course, is the Islamic Republic of Iran. Right now, the United States is in diplomatic talks with Iran. Do you think this is the right way forward, or is Israel missing an historic opportunity to strike?
We need a comprehensive policy. And the meaning of having comprehensive policy is that on the one hand, you prepare all your military capabilities and you develop them. But at the same time, you take any possible diplomatic opportunity in order to strengthen your security. So I can tell you for sure, because I'm quite familiar with the subject, I was the Deputy Chief of Staff at that time, that the JCPOA was a good agreement for Israel. Not the best one, but a good agreement, a good enough agreement for Israel. What Israel should have done concerning the JCPOA is to keep the JCPOA alive and at the same time work with America, with the rest of the world in order to establish, in order to create a better agreement for the future, something to replace the JCPOA. But at the same time, we need to prepare all our military capabilities, which are so badly needed in order to cope straightly with Iran.
And so we've discussed internal threats and external threats. Are you optimistic for the future of the country?
I'm basically a naturally very optimistic person, but I know that I need to combine not just the optimism, but also realism about our current situation. Israel is in the most crucial time in her history, in its history, no doubt. We are in a very sensitive period where the Israeli democracy is under threat, a severe threat. And I believe that we won't be able to survive unless we remain strong liberal democracy.
Now, you have emerged as one of the leading figures in the opposition against this current government. You speak of unity, you speak of solidarity, but do you feel you hold any responsibility in the divisions that this country is facing? Is now not the time to put our differences aside and come together?
For years, we tend to say, all right, let's speak, softly. We shouldn't fight for our values. Things will come down in a way, we will find a way, and so on and so on. What happened? The most radical, violent elements in the Israeli society came to power. If we want to remain liberal democratic state, we need to fight for it. We need to shout loud, and we need to do anything possible in order to convince the Israeli public that we need to choose, and we are approaching the era of decisiveness.
And so what would you like to wish the State of Israel on its 77th birthday?
Well, I wish all of us better security, time of reconciliation with our enemies, and time for reconciliation in the Israeli society. And we will achieve it, for sure, if we will be able to choose correctly between good and bad, decent and corrupted. So I urge mainly, young people in Israel, be involved.
Major General Yair Golan, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
The conversation you're about to see is one of the hardest I've ever had. Rachel and John Goldberg-Pollen are true voices of valor. For more than 300 days, they fought with unimaginable strength to bring their beautiful son, Hirsch, back from the tunnels of Gaza. Just days before the IDF believed it could rescue him, Hirsch, along with 5 others, was brutally murdered by Hamas. And yet, Rachel and John have continued to share a message of strength, unity, and an unwavering love for Israel and for all humanity.
How did you go from such a quiet life in Talpiot to leading a global campaign? What gave you the strength to do it?
Well, I really think that any of the families will answer this very similarly, which is it was a reflexive, primal, parental, familial response when someone who you love is actually in a life and death situation, in danger, you go. And there wasn't a have talk, there wasn't a motivating moment of how are we going to do this? It was absolutely unabashed, go.
But even after burying your son, you continue to speak out, you continue to advocate with such grace and such strength. Do you ever feel like giving up? And what keeps you going when the pain feels so unbearable?
So it's a couple of things. One is, I think every member of Am Yisrael is feeling some pain, understands the plight of the hostages, and is trying to do their part. Certainly, we lived it. we had the most tragic possible ending, and we are motivated by doing everything we can to make sure that no other parents, no other family meets the end that we met. We need to get these people home now. I will say another piece is, it is what Hirsch would do.
And really does lead to my next question, which is about Hirsch. What would Hirsch say if he could see you now? What do you think he'd think about the way that you've carried on his memory, and also how you found the strength, as you just said, to make sure that this doesn't happen to anybody else?
Well, the first part of the question of, we do think, how are we walking the tightrope of trying to share who Hirsch was in a realistic way, while also being his biggest fans, obviously. I think that he would be okay with how we're sharing him. Hopefully we're not doing anything too embarrassing. And we're constantly trying to temper the reality that Hirsch was a normal person. I think there's a huge temptation and thirst that people sometimes have when they've lost someone that they adore and that is part of them, and they sort of lionize them and legendize them. And we're trying very hard to remember who Hirsch was, who Hirsch still is in many ways, and to share it in an honest way, while also obviously being his parents who thought he was, the perfect son for us.
Wow. Now, you've been traveling the world, meeting with world leaders, been in the White House and some of the most important halls across the globe. What have you learned about the world in the last 18 months, but also what have you learned about yourselves?
So I'll take the first part of that question, which is, Rachel and I both had a maybe naive view of what happens in the halls of power for so many decades before this experience. And it was that generally there are leaders out there and they have the best interests of their people at heart. And that's what drives all of these leaders. And what we have learned is it's more complicated than that. We have heard words in the last 18 months that we were familiar with, but we've heard them more in the last 18 months than ever before. Words like interests and equities, when we would push on, well, why isn't X happening? It seems so obvious. And we'd be told, well, there are other interests, there are other equities at play, and we've had a real sense in our education in global diplomacy.
I think both John and I have learned is when you really believe in what you're doing, there's no fear, there's no self-consciousness, there's no second guessing, which I felt that I really had a lot of those pre-October 7th, which I think most of us do. All of a sudden, the clarity of purpose and mission has taken over who we are. It feels almost like our DNA has been replaced with a fearlessness that I certainly never had before. And I feel that what the hostage families are doing is such a righteous purpose, and therefore the determination that we have all found that's expressed in different ways, but that mission and clarity is something that I never had before.
Over the last 18 months, we've seen the country first unify after October 7th, but also now have a lot of disunity once again. But somehow, both of you seem to continue to push this message of unity. Why do you believe that there's been so much disunity in Israel, and really for so long, even before October 7th? And do you really believe, or you still believe, that we can actually come together as a country?
Rachel, a few months ago, brought to my attention a quote that just sits so prominently in my head. And it's from Mark Twain in 1901, in which he said, patriotism is loyalty to your country always and to your government when they deserve it. Now, I'm not commenting on this specific government, but what I'm saying is Israelis have such passion and loyalty for country. I think there is the sense among all of us. We have this one small country. We are going to do whatever we need to do to strengthen this country, protect this country, make it the best country possible. And I'm somehow still optimistic that we are going to figure out how to do it. At the end of the day, we are all going to acknowledge we are one people, one country, and we're going to make this work together.
Here we are in this country. We have different views. We have different ideas. We have different belief systems. We have different ways of looking at things. That is fine. But we are one, and we have to figure it out.
Wow, it's so beautiful. Now, you know, this Memorial Day is obviously going to be very different for both of you. The first time that you're going to be parents of a bereaved hero, or be bereaved parents of a fallen hero. As Olim, you know, and I'm also an Ola myself, and, you know, you come here with your children and you know that this is something that's going to happen. They're going to go to the army, they're going to get older, things go on in this country, and this is an option, but none of us ever believe it's going to be us. What message, as Olim, do you want to share with Israelis and with the Jews around the world?
I mean, I'll piggyback on the message of unity that we need, and take it in a slightly different direction, which is, I've said, of course, every person in this country, let alone those of us who have lost our loved ones, would in a heartbeat go back to October 6th. Wipe this whole situation out and rewind. It's not reality. And so we are left with having to find the resilience and how to take our pain, our tragedy, our suffering on an individual level, a family level, a community level, a collective national level, and somehow learn from it, fix it, and turn it into something good. That is very much where we are channeling our energies right now. And it's hard. It's hard. Those families who are sitting inside, grieving, and can't come out to the world, I get it. And there's no critique of that. Everybody has to do what works for them. But we are very much trying to figure out how to harness the best possible things we can out of this tragedy.
As immigrants, we have been asked many times, in countless times, do we wish we hadn't moved here? And it has never made sense to us. The question doesn't make sense to us. I don't know why. It's like it doesn't compute. This is our life. This is our place. We chose to hitch our wagon to the fate and the faith of Israel. And to that, we feel very much that is the destiny and is our destiny. And we feel complete with that, even with the horrifying and forever tragedy that we will be trying to digest. And I feel that we are lucky to be part of the people of Israel and of this challenging chapter, and that we have the opportunity to see what mission and meaning and purpose will come from this challenge.
Can we celebrate on Yom HaAtzmaut?
holidays, Shabbatot, are especially hard, right? And we very much understand that while we are grieving every second, every minute of every day since we got the news about Hirsch, and others have sympathy and are also in this struggle, and certainly there are families of soldiers who are in the struggle, that for many, you have to find moments to celebrate. It's not healthy, it's not natural, it's not good for a psyche and a country if it's always heavy and down. So I don't know what we're going to do personally, but I think that the country does need to celebrate our hard-fought independence, in some ways maybe even more during this hard time than we have in the past.
What do you want to say to the families of the 59 hostages that are still in Gaza, who are clinging to hope every single day?
They know this. They don't need to hear it from me. We said all along from the beginning that hope is mandatory. It's not a suggestion. It's not advice. It's a command. I actually think it's a command because the line between being hopeful and falling into deep despair is so fragile and so dangerous. And we lived it for 330 days. But even what we lived is different from what these families are living, because we were guessing what Hirsch was experiencing. And now with the released hostages, we know. And that is a very different reality. What these families have to endure, knowing the details of what their loved ones are enduring, is almost unbearable to swallow. It's unbearable to inhale. And so I say to them, I'm sending you every ounce of strength and love that we have. I don't need my strength anymore. I can do it being weak. But they need every ounce of strength that everyone can give them to just keep breathing. And they will keep breathing. And they need to do what they've been doing so well, staying strong and surviving. And God willing, those 24 people who we know are alive will come home in a blink of an eye. And those 35 cherished, precious people who need to come home to be buried in a respectful way will come home also in the blink of an eye. And we as a nation can start to walk forward again. And in the meantime, we just have to keep going.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us today.
I'd now like to welcome another remarkable couple to the studio, the parents of Omer Neutra, who was tragically killed by Hamas on October 7th, and whose body remains held in the hands of terrorists in Gaza. Ronen and Orna Neutra have shown extraordinary strength as they continue to fight to bring their son home and give him the dignity of a proper burial. Ronen, Orna, thank you so much for being with us today. Let's start with Omer. What do you want the world to know about who he was, not just as a soldier, but as your son?
Well, Omer was born here in New York, grew up on Long Island. He was a very lively, fun, friendly kid. As he grew up, he became very charismatic and always drew a lot of kids. But he never took this lightly, you know. He cared a lot about his friendship, about the children around him. He was very inclusive, and he lived by that example. You know, he didn't see the differences between people. He saw what brought them together, and he was that kind of connector everywhere that he went. He was very involved in the community. He took leadership roles in his youth group, and it was a Jewish youth group, and he always felt like he needed to bring everyone closer to his real passion, which was Israel. He loved Israel. He lived life to the fullest. He was always busy and involved in so many things.
Now, Omer grew up in America but chose to serve in the Israeli army. What do you think inspired that decision? Were you surprised and were you proud?
We are both Holocaust survivor families. He grew up on that notion that Israel is critical for the Jewish people. And at age 18, after finishing high school, even though he was accepted to college here in New York, we decided as a family it's going to be good for him to get closer to his roots, spend time with the family, spend time learning about different aspects in Israel. And he just insisted on joining a gap year with other Israeli kids, pre-army program called Mechina. And as such, he chose one in a kibbutz in the north, spent a lot of time with other kids who were about to draft to the IDF, and really fell in love with the people, with the country. And he couldn't see himself eventually, after much deliberation, going back to college and leaving the other kids behind, doing their duty, protecting the Israeli society and the country, having to go to the IDF as compulsory for them. So he decided to become a lone soldier, Chayal Boded.
Now, what are you doing today to memorialize Omer and keep his memory alive?
So since we received the news that Omer was taken hostage, this is October 8th, 2023, realizing that we live here in New York and he's an American citizen, that we have a responsibility to bring attention to the plight of the hostages here on this side of the ocean, to communicate it to the government and to engage them in fighting for the release of the hostages. And that's what we've been focused on since October 2023. We've been on to Washington maybe 30 times. We were on every stage possible, and every rally, and on the media hundreds of times, raising awareness to the plight of the hostages and doing everything that we can to bring Omer back. On December 1st, 2024, this is 5 months ago, we were notified by the IDF that they found new intelligence that indicates that Omer was killed on October 7th, a few hours after he was taken into the tunnels in Gaza. That's been devastating for us. But it really didn't change much of our focus, because Omer's not back. He's still in the tunnels of Gaza, and there are still another 48 hostages that are still there. And 58, sorry. And we're still in that same spot of bringing them back. You know, when we were notified that Omer was killed, we held a memorial service here on Long Island, and we sat Shiva for a few days, which is unbelievable, without anybody, without, you know, it's just not real. It's surreal. This whole experience has been surreal.
It's all based on information, right? Of intelligence, of somebody that thinks something.
Right.
And based on this, now we have to say that, okay, our son is no longer alive. It's so difficult.
Right.
And it's more than a year after he was taken from us, and we're fighting to get him back alive.
Right.
So this whole situation is very awkward.
Right. And thousands of people came to share their respects. And people were like shattered, right? We've been fighting for such a long time, for 14 months. We were all over the world. multiple times in Israel, like I said, tens of times in DC. We met with everyone of influence, and to receive this news 14 months later, someone walked over to me and said, I'm sure you're wondering why now? Why 14 months later? But she said, if you had received this news on October 7th, you wouldn't have done everything that you've done since. And because of what you did, the whole world knows who Omer is, and the whole world knows about the hostages. So that kind of kept us focused, you know. This is our job. This is what Omer would have wanted us to do on his behalf and on behalf of the remaining hostages that are still there. And the truth is that our life, as we knew it, stopped on October 7th, and we never got back to our previous life. We just can't. We cannot move on until Omer receives the dignified burial that he deserves.
Do you see any hope for Israel's future?
The hostages must come back as their highest priority. And Hamas, which was there for the last 20 years and probably will continue to be there, should be dealt as a separate issue. Hamas needs to be eliminated. But first, bring our people back. How can a soldier mother send him back to fight in Gaza not knowing that the government will do everything to bring him back if something happens to him? It's creating a disbelief and a trust issue between the people and its government and its army. And we never had it. And we have to change it.
This year, Memorial and Independence Days are heavier than ever. What do those days mean to you now? And what's your message to other families in Israel and the diaspora?
For us, every day is Memorial Day. You know, we live this every day. Israeli society will not be able to move on.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
We called this conference Voices of Valor because he wanted to give you a glimpse into the courage of Israel's heroes. Our next panel does just that. Nimrod Palmach is the CEO of Israel Is, an NGO founded in 2017 to share Israel's story with the world. But on October 7th, Nimrod became more than a spokesperson. He was a soldier who defied orders and headed south to where he felt he was needed most. Rami Shmueli was one of the organizers of the Nova Music Festival. He witnessed unimaginable horror during and after the brutal massacre and lost dozens of friends. Yet he made a vow to dance again. Rita Yedid, a survivor of the Nova attack, shares a similar story of resilience and hope. Their stories will be brought to life in a special conversation with ILTV correspondent Shosh Bedrosian.
As our Voices of Valor panel continues, joining us now is Nimrod Palmach, the former CEO of Israel Is, and Rami Shmuel, one of the main producers of the Re'im Festival, and Rita Yedid, who was at the festival with several family members and survived that day. All of them took on significant roles in the moments October 7th massacre was unfolding. They reinvented themselves and their own missions after the attacks as well. Thank you all for joining us today.
Hi.
Thank you.
So, Rami, I want to start with you. You were one of the main producers of the Re'im Festival, a significant role dealing with the event itself, but you changed your complete role when it came to the aftermath of October 7th. You were in the field searching for bodies with one of the organizations, Zaka. Tell me what prompted you to change your role, change your mission to help out after these days.
In my mind, I thought that there is police and military force and everybody is taking control of the situation. Just when I arrived home, I realized that nobody is searching for our friends. Everybody was in chaos. After we knew on each victim or a participator or survivor of the festival, we started to collect items, try to regain control of the area. From that day on, everybody is changing in Israel. We have still 59 of our brothers and sisters holding hostage in Hamas tunnels. And I think just when we really release all these 59 persons and bring them home, we will start to get our things together, like I said, you know, we'll start to get back to our life, to the main things that there is to do after what we've been through is to heal. And I think these 59 wounds that are still open, until they will close, nobody in this country will really can go back on track and heal himself.
And now we turn to Nimrod. Nimrod, you defied orders that day. You were supposed to go to a base in Jerusalem after the attacks happened, but you decided to go south. And not only that, you defended people that day, you defended yourself, you were also injured. You were using shields, armor from soldiers that were killed in that attack that day. Tell me why you decided to take on that role, a really heroic role, in fact.
I felt really bad that morning. I had this really deep feeling that something else is happening than what I've been told. And I just confided my commander. Eventually I decided I cannot stay here in Jerusalem. I disobeyed his order and I drove to Jerusalem. What led me there, I still don't know. I thank God that I made this decision. On my way there, I had a phone call with my ex-wife. Her current boyfriend lives in Kibbutz Nir Oz. He's one of the members of Kibbutz Nir Oz with his 2 daughters. And at that moment when she calls and cries and begs for help, go and save them, now I'm not only driving south, I have a mission. And on my way there, I realized the amount of terrorists that already infiltrated Israel. I've seen on the WhatsApp group of Kibbutz Nir Oz the amount, and I realized I'm about to die today. It's not a matter of if I'll die, it's when I'll die. I managed to leave a voice note, a video for my kids as a goodbye. I was 100% gonna die. And from that moment and on, my only motivation was to help people, because I felt if I was one of the Nova party people, if I was one of the members of the kibbutzim, I would pray to God to send someone to save me, send the IDF. And myself, I chose to be one of these people. I know one of these people needs to have a face. What I've seen there from the morning, I was one of the first responders to actually get there and to stay alive throughout the day. It will stay with me forever. And like you said, the souls of the ones we weren't able to save or even to prevent or kidnap, the guilt will stay with me forever.
I think what's so incredible is that day, all 3 of you on this panel right now don't know each other, but you were all in the same place, literally at the same time on October 7th, and you all have different stories of surviving. Now, Rita, you were there at the Nova Music Festival, and you survived with several of your family members. Talk to me about what you had to do in those moments, how it has now shaped you today.
So definitely laying under my husband for over 6 hours and holding my sister's hand when we are in a ticket booth, and the Allahu Akbar and Idbach al-Yahud and all these terrorists who came at us and shot us from the outside, and understand that you're not going back home, and to survive it and to understand that God did give us another opportunity here to stay alive. I think that what got it for me is to be able to share my story. It's to be able to talk to people and to see if I stayed alive. There is no option that I will let myself go down and be in the sorrow. I have to take the most amount of therapy that I will be given. And from October 8th, Safe Heart, an organization that came up already the next day, it gave us right away psychologists and therapy from day one. And I think it actually saved me. And more than that, my psychologist is the one who encouraged me to go out and share my story. And I didn't know how much impact it will create for others. I didn't know that I can help others to feel stronger. And I even went to the UN a few weeks ago to speak about this innovation of treating trauma and how important it is to, go there right away, not to put it aside. Mm-hmm. And for me, as being a property manager before, and now knowing that I'm a motivational speaker, that's what God put me now on this roadmap, I think it's amazing. And I will do anything in my power to make others stronger.
Yeah, how do the 2 of you feel knowing that you've taken on this new role? How do you feel sharing your stories today? Have you seen the impact?
I'm not sharing my story very often. I have a hard time with that because, you know, some of my employers are still kidnapped over there. Elkanah and Bar. Bar was Kabat in civilian Kabat in our festival, and Elkanah was one of the managers over there. So I'm not sharing my story a lot. I'm different from them. They have maybe more power than me. But this
How do you feel in this moment, though, when you're here and you're talking about this and you have these two incredible people next to you? What is it?
First of all, I'm very impressed, really. I don't know his story but what I've heard in the room that we're waiting for the interview, he's a hero. Every story of every survival, of every warrior or civilians that took action on that day and forward is, I compare it to a movie story. I sat with a lot of survival. Every story is amazing, you cannot believe it. I sat last week with Naama. Naama was one of the survivors that were pulling out from the garbage can over there. She took 4 bullets from Kalach. She stayed 15 minutes until they rescue her from the garbage. And you're sitting with the girl, 27 years old, and you're hearing her story from the moment she get into the garbage can and until they pull her out with 4 bullets in her body. And you cannot believe. You're sitting with her and you say, nah, what are you talking about?
So that name, Naama, that Rami told us about, that holds weight. You know Naama. You actually know her, and we're connecting the dots right here. Talk to me about who she is.
So Naama is one of the producers with the Nova, and she actually invited us to the party and to be in a role called helpers. So when you go as a helper, you have to give like a few hours of work throughout the festival. And Naama, after I've seen in the beginning of the party, the next time I've seen her was taking out of the garbage dumpster she was at and laying on the ground, bleeding so hard from her chest. And I just remember going down on my knees and holding her hand and being like, Naama, like, what can I do to help you? And, you know, all I felt is that I'm bothering her to die. Like, that's it. Like, I'm talking too much. It's probably bothering her. It's probably painful for her. And I should move away. And I felt like I didn't do anything that day, you know, that I didn't have any power in me to help anyone. And Naama arrived to the hospital on the 99 second, you know, the last second of her almost death, because my husband didn't agree to go to the hospital before her. So he took the toll on himself that he doesn't know what's going on in his body from his wounds. And she's alive with us today. And to be honest, she sent me a message a week after, on October 14, messaging me that I was like a little fairy and giving her some powers that I didn't even know that are existing, you know, and it's in me at that moment of the day. So it's just those type of stories that you never know who you're gonna meet. Now in Israel, you can be 3 people. One is a soldier, one is from the production, one is a survivor, a brother of someone who is still in Gaza. I think we are in very big emotional times now, and we need to remember to be here one for another as much as possible.
Nimrod, tell us how you're feeling about your role after all of this.
I felt that my position and the duty I've taken on myself didn't over. I had to do something else, both for my mental health and realizing that the lies and the narrative against Israel will be against us from October 8. And I found myself traveling the world in parliaments, in the US Congress, in other places, sharing my story. But very fast, I'm realizing that it's really hard for me emotionally and it's not scalable. And I decided to create and to build a new vehicle to allow others, people that are having difficult time to share the story, to be able to share. And that's how we created at Israel Is, our Survive to Tell VR project, where we essentially brought the Nova Festival and the kibbutzim into campuses in America through VR. I believe there's another front, not just what we're doing in Gaza and in Lebanon, there's another front in the world. And secondly, the third front is on our hearts. All the survivors, all the people that were there, we need to take care of ourselves. And one of the ways to take care is to tell the story, to be able to share it, to be able to even speak it out loud with yourself. I think it's helped. I believe it helped me.
Incredible. Thank you all for sharing your stories today. I know it's extremely emotional, and I'm telling you, the power of the three of you being in this room, in this studio with us today at this very moment just speaks volumes of who you are, what you've been through, and how you've taken your experiences and you have made a difference. And for that, thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for hosting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doron Almog, chairman of the executive of the Jewish Agency for Israel, has a storied legacy, both as a decorated IDF commander and a devoted social activist. In 2016, he was awarded the Israel Prize, the nation's highest honor for lifetime achievement. But Doron has also faced unimaginable personal loss. His brother, Iran, was killed in the Yom Kippur War. Iran. Okay, thank you. His brother, Iran, was killed in the Yom Kippur War. In 2003, 5 of his family members were murdered in the Maxim restaurant bombing. And on October 7th, tragedy struck again. 2 of his relatives were murdered, and 4 more were taken hostage. He will share his story in an interview with ILTV Daily News editor Steve Leibowitz.
I'm with Jewish Agency Chair and Major General Doron Almog. Thank you so much for being with us today. The war on October 7th impacted all of us deeply in Israel. You spent a decade in Gaza, fighting in Gaza, leading Israeli troops. You also lost family members, 6 of them, on October 7th. How have you personally been impacted by the war, and what are your feelings today?
This is the biggest crisis since the establishment of the State of Israel, and the biggest crisis of the Jewish people since Second World War. As bereaved family, it's painful every day. It's a punch. We always take our loved one in our memories, in our life. It is not controlled, the memories. In Kfar Aza, October 7, 2 members from my family were killed. Nadav Goldstein Almog and his daughter Yam, 19, he was 49, she was 19, and 4 were taken hostage. The wife, Chen Goldstein Almog, the second daughter, Agam, 17 and a half, and 2 boys, Gal and Tal, 9 and 11. They return after 51 days, but they continue leading the protest of the family hostages. They speak and they fight for the return of the 59 hostages still in Gaza. After Leila Seder, I think in Leila Seder, everyone need to feel like Eli Sharabi. Eli Sharabi returned nearly after 500 days and was chained, tortured. His testimony is something that needs to touch every Jew in the world. When we speak about from slavery to liberty in Pesach, in Leila Seder, it's about the hostages. It's about our commitment, our unconditional commitment to bring them home. Now, the Prime Minister, the government, and every Jew in the world continue fighting, bring them home now. Because victory is about the unity, it's about the bonds, it's about mutual responsibility.
I feel as though the issue of the hostages and the issue of the end of the war in Gaza are very, very contentious within our society and within the Jewish people worldwide. Yet, we are one people. We have to stand together or we fall together. What is your message to the Jewish people today?
We should be more united, more unified than ever before. But we must have the spirit of our soldiers. The soldiers, without saying a word, jumped to the war. And what is the message? What is the spirit? It's unconditional love, it's the readiness to give my life. And this is the spirit of the state of Israel. We are ready to do all is needed to protect the only Jewish state.
Once upon a time, the Jewish Agency was the pre-state government. What is the role of the Jewish Agency today?
Number one, connect, strengthen the connection with every Jewish community all over the world, number one. Number two, Aliyah. My prayer, my will to bring 1 million Jews to the state of Israel, to strengthen Israel, kibbutz galuyot.
Over what period of time?
I hope in 5 years.
Within 5 years. A million in 5 years. That'll be the head.
1 million in 5 years. We need new blood, new spirit. So Aliyah. I said connect, Aliyah, resilience. What is resilience? Resilience focused on the operation of Jewish agency here in Israel, in the state of Israel.
Doron Almog, it is such an honor for me to be able to speak to you today. Thank you for being with us today.
I'm proud to be Israeli. I'm very proud to be chairman of Jewish Agency and continue the legacy of the founders of State of Israel.
And I'm proud that we have leaders like you. Thanks for being with us today.
Our next two guests are active IDF soldiers, two young men who made the courageous decision to come to Israel on their own to fight for the Jewish state. For security reasons, their faces will be blurred. D and P, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Now, P, you were in Sweden on October 7th and watched the horrors unfold from afar. What was going through your mind in those days, and what made you decide to leave everything behind and join the IDF?
For me, it was a very big shock. I remember the first couple of days very clearly. And I felt very afraid, not only for my friends and family in Israel, but of course also for my family and my own safety in Sweden.
And Dee, what is your story?
I lived my whole life in Boston, growing up in a Jewish community. And when I finished school, I decided to do a gap year. In the gap year, when 7th October happened, I knew exactly what I had to do. I realized what all the hatred could do, and all the damage it could do, and how it could kill hundreds of innocent civilians. And I knew the thing that I had to do to really protect the country, that it was so dear to me, is to join the army.
Now, P, you've left behind a marketing degree, a comfortable life, and even your little sister who means the world to you. What do you want her and others watching to understand about why you made this choice?
For me, it was the obvious choice because I'm healthy and I have the motivation to go and want to help. For me, I have to go because in the end, there's this responsibility. I believe there's a responsibility that I have to put out the best I can do into the world. And my belief in Israel and how important it is for every Jew to have a home and somewhere to be safe. I can't just sit on my hands and not do anything when I see that there's a war going on and people are hurting and innocent people getting slaughtered. It's horrible, and it's very something that I can't stand for. So I want everyone to know that doing this would make me really happy to be able to do something meaningful.
Now, P, you've said that if there is no Israel, there's no good world. That's a very powerful statement. What does Israel mean to you personally, and how does that belief shape your daily service?
When I was in Sweden, I'm not only speaking from my perspective, it's also how my friends and family feel in Sweden as Jews. There is this constant worry that you're not really safe with your own identity being Jewish. There's this constant, almost a pressure, like it's tough to breathe. And I remember when I went to Israel, it's like this pressure, it released. I feel very free. And it's crazy to explain that I come to this country and there's a war and there's terrorists and there's shootings and stabbings and I feel safer. It's very hard for people to believe that if they're not Jewish, but as a Jew, I feel safe here. And I want everyone to be able to feel that safety. And it's a shame that they don't do that in their home countries like I did. So I want to bring everyone to a place that they're safe so that they can be Jewish openly, because I didn't have that.
Now, Dee, this war has tested every soldier in ways that no one expected. What gives you the strength to keep going, and what message do you have for other young Jews thinking about stepping up for Israel?
Well, I think the step of doing Aliyah and joining the Israeli army will never be easy. But after the atrocities of the 7th of October, it only proves the point even more why we have to do it. And even though there'll be hardships in the army and things might not go well, your commander might not be as nice to you, or you might go home and there's no laundry there, no food for you, you remember why you're doing this. You're doing it for the Jewish country, and then we only have one country, and we have to do everything we can to protect it.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having us again.
I'd like now to welcome Dan Diker, president of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. He'll be sharing an important perspective on Israel's current security and diplomatic challenges and what lies ahead.
Dr. Diker, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So Israel has dealt severe blows to Hamas, dealt severe blows to Hezbollah, as well as to the Houthis. But the head of the octopus, the Islamic Republic of Iran, has remained largely untouched. And now it's using diplomacy with the United States to try and evade an Israeli and American airstrike. You know, is Israel missing an historic opportunity to deal a deadly blow to the regime once and for all, in your view?
The opportunity still exists, but I think we must say that Iran has been dealt a blow. They have been hit very hard. Certainly in the last 9 months by Israel. There have been 2 direct attacks by Israel. Israel has just completely destroyed its air defense system and strategic strikes. And let's remember, Iran is not Iran only. It's Iran and what they call the axis of resistance, the terror proxy network, that has essentially been destroyed. It has been dismantled. So Iran is at its most vulnerable that it's been in 45 years, and Israel has the opportunity to take military action. It's just a question of stages. Stage 1 is high leverage diplomacy led by the United States. And if that fails, President Trump has said military option is there. And he's even used the word, it will be very bad for Tehran. Tehran is desperate to stay in power. And people that know Iranian negotiating behavior know that the regime will do anything to stay in power and anything to regain its power. That's why they're negotiating. So keep your eyes on this. This is a very high-risk strategic game, and Israel and the United States are aligned. But there is a tag team thing going on here. It may be that Israel launches a military strike even before the end of talks.
So, of course, we'll keep an eye on that. But, you know, October 7th began a snowball reaction in this region. It's led to significant changes throughout the Middle East. You know, what are some of the major changes and more specifically the emerging threats to Israel moving forward?
Well, there are conceptual, there are ideological threats, and then there are actually physical kinetic threats. The physical threats still exist in Syria and in Lebanon. That game is not over completely. There are a lot of unknowns, a lot of question marks. Clearly, the Houthi situation is still a direct threat to Israel and the United States. We see the United States acting on that threat in bombing the Houthis in a very tough way. The major threat to Israel, believe it or not, is less military and terror-driven and more ideological and political threat from the Palestinian Authority throughout the West. The October 8th war, which is the political war warfare, diplomatic warfare, online warfare, to delegitimize and dehumanize Israel across all of these international organizations, beginning with the United Nations. That is a strategic and even an existential threat to Israel, that Israel now has to start fighting the war for global influence, because the more it became the strong horse in the East, the more it became the targeted donkey in the West. And that is the war that Israel has to win, is the war for hearts and minds in the West, because Israel's position has never been so compromised. Genocide, war criminal, apartheid. There has never been a country in the free world or not the free world that whose existence has been, and the right to his existence has been so targeted. That is Israel's war to win right now.
And, you know, Israel is such a small country, but it holds great strategic importance for the West. But zooming out, I want to zoom out for a moment and take a look at sort of global shifts of the great powers, the United States, China, and Russia. Where does Israel fit in here?
Well, this is first of all a region that has global implications and a global echo effect. The United States and the Saudi Arabia, together with Israel, has now the opportunity to create a global coalition in order to first and foremost stabilize the Middle East, secure Israel, and by definition, create a defense effect against the rise of China and an unfriendly Russia, let's put it that way. That is why President Trump has tried to strip away Russia from Iran in order to create a much stronger base of operation in the Middle East. This is the basis of what we can call the Trump MBS vision for the Middle East. Let's remember one important point. Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, sees himself and Saudi Arabia as a global power, not as only a regional power. We see that in his hosting the Turks and the Russians and the Chinese. In other words, this Middle East has become a global platform that Israel, the United States, and Saudi Arabia could actually be leading towards a new era of security, stability, and prosperity.
Well, let's hope so. Dr. Dan Diker, thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you.
Next, we have a fascinating panel featuring Joseph Gittler, founder of Leket Israel, and farmer Yossi Naim. Since the start of the war, Leket Israel has not only continued its vital work feeding those in need, but has also mobilized thousands of volunteers to support Israeli farmers in this time of crisis. They'll be interviewed by ILTV anchor Lidar Gravei-Lazi.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Yossi, let's start with you. Can you share with us briefly your story on October 7th and how that tragic day also impacted your farm?
I live in a moshav named Rigan, right beside the border next to Rafah. I'm married with 4 sons. That Saturday morning, it started with heavy rocket from the Iron Dome that right beside my house. And very, like in a minute, you understand there is something else because you hear a lot of light gun, like Kalashnikov, all the shooting all around you, from the left, from the right, from your front. And there was like 8 motorcycles broke into our moshav. There was only 2 guys with M16 tried to hold them. They asked for help from the army. There was nobody answer them. And there is another moshav, is like 10 kilometers east to my moshav. They heard on the radio that Rigan is calling for help and nobody responds, and they asked for permission to come help us. And the order was not to stay in their own moshav named Shlomit and to protect their family over there. And they didn't listen to that order. They sent 4 guys to my moshav, start fighting the terrorists. 2 of them died, 2 wounded. They called for help. They didn't call for help from the IDF. They called for help from their own friends who stay in Shlomit. And another 3 guys came. And they did like 3.5 hours fighting in our moshav. And after 3.5 hours, the terrorists left the moshav. In that time, I was in the shelter room with my 4 kids and my wife, holding the handle, running to the kitchen, bring knife, calling my father. My father and my mom, they live in this moshav. My brother with his 3 kids live in the moshav. And I was sure, like 100%, my cousin with her 3 boys, that's it, they murdered them. And another 3 houses. And only in the evening we understand, no one from my moshav, not even wounded. That's our miracle, my moshav miracle. As far as agriculture, everything stopped. And only on Monday we left the moshav, and I decided to take my family to Eilat just to relax. My wife, she wanted to go to her mom. I told her, listen, after this weekend, let's go to relax one night, and then we decide where to. And Wednesday I came back to the farm, to the moshav. Me and my dad, the only 2 crazy people who came back just to see my 12 Thai workers, the fields. Everything was like a closed military area, full of army. By the way, the army came to my moshav only in 6 p.m. They checked door by door that nobody is like kidnapped or wounded. And it's looked like the end of the world, like the end of the state, honestly. And it was struggling since then. Most of the Thai people asked to leave, they left. I stayed with like 4 Thai, and then another 2 came back, so it was like 6 Thai workers. Some of the fields I was not allowed to go to, even to see. Some of the field we went out to work, but it was so, every day was like missiles, drones, everything, you name it. And it was in my mind, like maybe I would close the water, wait until the war will end, and then come back. And it was an argument between me and my dad. He was come with me, go back from Eilat, go every weekend. He said, no, you fight. So we stay and fight. And I used to go like 500 dunam a year. Until now, I go barely 100. We're still pushing the wheel. We're still fighting.
Still fighting.
Yes.
And Joseph, I want to turn to you. You hear Yossi's story, and there are so many similar stories from agricultural farms across Israel. How is Leket helping Israeli farmers during the war?
Thanks for the opportunity to be here. There are a lot of Yossis. This Yossi is unique, and we've spent a lot of time together, and he's a valued friend, and his opinions are very important to us, thinking about what makes sense for us to do. I would say already Saturday night, October 7th, we understood that Normal Leket, which is a food rescue organization working with the farming community, working with the catering community to make sure that high-quality excess food doesn't go to waste, what we do normally is going to be out. For how long? Weeks, months, we didn't know. And we made a decision right there and then that we're going to switch our emphasis slightly. While, of course, we're still going to take care of feeding the poor, we're also going to take care of farmers in ways we normally don't. Normally, when Leket meets a Yossi, it's a one-way. Yossi loves the Lekets of the world, right? He loves the fact that if he has crops that he can't sell and make money from, that they're going to feed people in need. But really what Yossi wants to do is sell all his crops. We decided on October 7th, we need to support Yossis, the Yossis of the world. If that meant financial support, if that meant loans, if that meant purchasing product from them, which we never, ever do, ever, to help keep them afloat, grants for farmers to help them buy replacement equipment, and most important, as Yossi alluded to, so many of the foreign workers, the real core of the picking operations in this country, leaving the country. So since October 7th, we've sent over 120,000 volunteers on buses that we've raised money for, primarily to the south. Now that's starting to move more to the north as things get slowly back to normal. But as you heard from Yossi, it's still a struggle because you have farmers who missed 1 growing cycle, 2 growing cycles. It impacts their cash flow. It's hard for them to stay in business. So even to this day, a year and a half almost into the war, we're still thinking very much about how do we help farmers in ways that we didn't before October 7th.
And Yossi, so turning back to you, how has Leket Israel helped you throughout this difficult time?
Leket for me was, I used to call it a government organization because I never used this organization. Only until COVID. When COVID struck, Suddenly I grow leek, and I grow fennel, and I grow cabbage. And I used to call it, this is not, you plant one, you harvest one. So there is no leftovers, there is no leket. And in COVID, people buy the cans, toilet paper. They didn't buy leek, they didn't buy fennel, they didn't buy. And I have fields full of premium, vegetables nobody want to buy. And then I remember there is a guy from a government organization always call me, and I always refuse him because I have nothing to give. So I give him a call. And they came, and I was amazed. I was shocked even. I was a guest in my own field, and this is a unique feeling as a farmer. They make me donate to people basic, vegetables, not money, not. And I don't have even money to donate, but I did. That's why I start to call it a holy company, because they give you something else as a farmer. And then every time I have leftovers, I was more than happy to collect it and come and take. In October 7, I knew already Leket, and they offer money, pure money, not loans, volunteers, and you name it, everything. And for me, Leket, if you have the Office of Agriculture from the government, this is like the vessel, this is the body who's supposed to protect us, to take care of us, all the bureaucrats. Leket is the soul of the farmers, for the farmers. Because if I call this guy, or you name it, any guy from Leket, what do you need?
Incredible. Incredible organization.
Exactly.
And Joseph.
Even better.
Wow, you did not need me here today. He's a star.
So Joseph, I want to turn back to you. We're just ahead of Israel's Independence Day, Israel's 77th birthday. What would you like to wish the agricultural community and the state of Israel on its birthday?
Well, for the state of Israel, of course, peace and quiet, return of our hostages, return of our soldiers safely. That's most important. It's hard to heal in any way without that happening, and I know we're all in agreement on that. When it comes to farmers, it's been a rough go for the last couple of years for farmers. And by the way, obviously the focus has been on the south and on the north, but it almost didn't matter where you are in Israel. It's been a rough go. Businesses are built in a certain way, and when things go awry, it can be very difficult to snap back. And so I think for the farmers, we just want normalcy. We want tourism to come back. Someone like Yossi, he grows a little more exotic crops. And so if you're in the business of selling to hotels and high-end restaurants and places like that, you need customers. You need people to feel in the mood. I remember in the beginning of the war, my son, who was in Gaza, called me and, trying to see what's the feeling like, how's everyone doing? This is the beginning of November 2023. And I said, yeah, it's really hard, and no one wants, all the restaurants are really struggling. No one wants to go out to eat. And he said, Dad, that's what we're fighting for, so that the regular people who are not serving the military now can just live life normally. You can't let all the hospitality business go bust because of the war, and that impacts the farmers who are, our first line. I think that's really the government. What we need the government to do is to work hard at come at policies that protect farmers on the one hand and make sure they can earn a living, but on the other hand, find ways that the poor can also afford to buy fruits and vegetables. I love what Leket does. I founded the organization. I love the fact that we are able to rescue tens of thousands of tons of fruits and vegetables a year. But I would like to do that out of a place of health, of the economy, and giving it to people, not because they're poor, okay, but because of the abundance that we have here. And so hopefully we can find that middle ground. And if we can, I think that'll be an example of everyone benefiting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to both of you.
One of the consequences of Israel's long war on multiple fronts has been a disturbing rise in anti-Semitism around the world, particularly on U.S. college campuses. We've seen anti-Israel riots turn dangerous and violent, and Jewish students increasingly face harassment and discrimination. Our next panel will dive into these urgent and complex issues. Please welcome to the studio Matan Yafe, entrepreneur and co-founder of Ela Degel, who was part of a lawsuit against Harvard University for ignoring harassment and discrimination against Jewish students. Jonathan Davis, head of the Raphael Recanati International School at Reichman University. Ambassador Alan Baker from the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. And joining us on Zoom, Shai Davidai, assistant professor at Columbia Business School, and Edin Yadiger, a student at Columbia University.
So thank you to all our guests for joining us today here in the studio and on Zoom on this very important panel on anti-Semitism. Matan, I actually want to start with you. You know, you graduated from Harvard and then sued the university for its handling of anti-Semitism. What can you tell us? What happened? I mean, what prompted you to take legal action?
It all started actually when I was still a student over there, and in one of the courses I took with a Jewish professor, by the way, I did all my papers and submissions on Israel because I feel like I'm a soldier of Israel. I'm now a major in reserve. It's always my narrative, and I still want to fix the state. And then I did it on Israel as a liberal Jewish democracy. At first, he was excited about it and worked with me off the course. And then when the course started, at the end of the first day, he called me and my two Israeli friends who did it and told us we need to change the topic, the subject of the work. And we asked him, how come? And he said, we can't support states that define themselves according to ethnicity or religion or whatever. I opened Google. I told them 48% of the world's nations define themselves like that, including 100% of the Muslim nations who are all in your class. And he told me it's not the same thing because of the conflict. We told him, of course it's not the same thing. That's anti-Semitism. Have you ever asked for, in 40 years, from a student to change the topic of their work? He said no. He told us, it doesn't matter, you don't have any choice or it'll have consequences. We told him, bring it on. I will say that what kind of led me in the process was the understanding that, you know, I'm here as a student, but I'm quite old. I'm 40 years old. I'm a major in the IDF in a combat unit. I have a family, 5 boys. It didn't move me on the personal level, but I understood that if I were a Jewish guy or girl growing up in the United States without the Israeli backbone, this would be very frightening to me, and I would probably bend over. And I said, this is a war that we must fight. At the end of it, they offered a settlement that our lawyers thought would be very impactful for the university field in the United States, for Harvard, which is kind of at the top of the Ivy League, to adopt the IRA policy and make sure that anti-Semitism cannot happen in the campus. To tell you the truth, I don't know whether or not it will be enforced properly, but we're looking and we're searching for it to be properly enforced. And if it won't, we will be there to continue this battle because it's a never-ending story. I think this was the first critical landmark for them to declare that they are going to do something about anti-Semitism. And we will be there to continue the battle if the IRA policy won't be properly executed by Harvard.
Incredible. And Edin, I want to turn to you now. Edin, in Israel, Eden, in the United States, you know, you're a student at Columbia University. Can you paint a picture for us? What is life like today for a Jewish student on your campus?
Look, the anti-Semitism at Columbia University is as systemic and pervasive today as it was in October of 2023, in April of 2024 at the height of the encampments, and now in April of 2025, an entire year later. We still have students that are being singled out by professors like Joseph Massad, who praised the October 7 terror attacks in class, who is still teaching the only class on Israel in the Middle East Studies department. We still have regular festivals of anti-Semitic hate, where we have students not only spewing propaganda, which, you know, maybe they're entitled to do, but they're actually at this point doing things like chaining themselves to fences, drumming and chanting to the point where students like me can hear it in class and are barred from entering campus at certain points. And we still have Jewish students being held to the ultimate litmus test, which is, well, Jews are fine, but Zionists are not. So you are only welcome here if you are willing to denounce your connection to the state of Israel, to your homeland. But I will say, amidst all of that, the Jewish community at Columbia has never been stronger and more united. And I think that it is just so beautiful and truly a testament to what it means to be a Jew, to see that in the face of this hate, in the face of a lack of leadership and a lack of moral clarity and courage from the people that are supposed to be leading and protecting us, the Jewish community has really risen and come together to stand up against this hate and to stand together and to stand up for Israel and truth. Because we know that when Israel is under attack, Jews everywhere are under attack. And the Jewish community at Columbia, students and professors alike, are not willing to tolerate that. And so we are standing up. We are being proud Jews, wearing our Magen Davids, going to our Shabbat dinners, and screaming as loud as we possibly can that we will not be intimidated and that our connection to Israel will not be severed. And so that's really the status of the community now. It's difficult and it has been isolating, but we are united and we are strong and we are certainly not going anywhere.
Incredible. And Professor Shai David, I know you've become one of the loudest and clearest voices exposing anti-Semitism in academia. What was the tipping point for you, and what has the backlash been like?
Everybody wants to know about the back. I'll tell you about the tipping point. Really, it was the first protest at Columbia, which was on October 12th, 2023. And I always remind people of the timeline because October 12th, 2023 was before a single IDF soldier stepped into Gaza, right? It's like they were starting to protest against an imagined war before the war started. They were really just celebrating the massacre. And when I was there at that protest, kind of half observing, half feeling responsible for the Jewish and Israeli students, I saw something that I keep referring to it. It's not political and it's not ideological. It was hate. And when you see hate up close, now as Israelis, we are used to being hated by a lot of people. It's part of our DNA as Jews and Israelis, but when you see it up close and when you see it at the place that you're supposed to feel most comfortable, like it's your second home. You know, if you're a student, that's where you go to school. For me, it's where I go to work. Like that's where I spent most of my hours of awakening. It was just shocking. And I kept looking around to see where are the adults in the room? Like, where is the president of the university? Where is the chief operating officer? Where are all the people? And I saw that there were no adults. And I realized, well, I guess, you know, despite my youthful looks, I'm an adult. And that was the tipping point. I had to say something. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine to become a public figure, to be basically hunted by the university for speaking up, vilified by the pro-Hamas groups. But like Eden said, none of that matters because I'm not focusing on the hate that we're getting. I'm focusing on the community that we're building of Jews and many non-Jewish allies that realize that this goes beyond just anti-Jewish or anti-Israeli. This is really about anti-West, anti-American, anti-what Israel represents, which is, like Matan said, a liberal democracy. Things that should be taken for granted in the 21st century, but apparently some intellectuals are so smart that they'll accept any stupid idea, and that's what happens in the university right now.
And have your colleagues stood by you, or have they turned away?
My colleagues stood by, didn't stand by me. They were just standing by. I can tell you this, of the 30 people that work directly with me in the management division at Columbia Business School, not a single one has contacted me since I was expelled from campus on October of 2024. So it's been 6 months. I would like to believe that if I were of any different minority, speaking about any different kind of prejudice, they would have definitely if I was a person of color speaking about racism, a woman speaking about sexism, a gay speaking about homophobia, and that's important that they should have. I just don't understand the double standard of it's not hate, it's stupidity, it's ignorance, but I don't blame myself for other people's ignorance.
All right, thank you for that. And Alon, I want to turn to you now as a legal and diplomatic expert. How do you view what's happening on college campuses? Are schools violating sort of their basic legal protections? And what responsibility does the government or do governments, internationally have to step in?
Matan said something very, very correct. He said nothing changes. And almost 60 years ago, I was the president of the Jewish Students' Organization of the United Kingdom. And we went through the same thing, but then it was under the surface. It was very British. It was very polite. Now it's above the surface. It's open and it violates law. And it violates federal law, it violates state law, and it violates campus rules. And for this reason, there's every legitimacy for taking whatever action needs to be taken assertively in order to prevent this.
And what does international law say about incitement and hate speech in academic spaces? And maybe you can respond to what's happening in the United States specifically today with regards to President Trump's freezing funds and cracking down on these schools.
Look, international law. There are several international conventions criminalizing racism, hate speech, and everything connected. There are several conventions, and the United States is party to these conventions, as is Israel and most other countries of the world. In fact, they've become common, accepted, customary law. And so, since the United States is party to these conventions, then these countries are obliged to enact within their municipal law prohibitions and take whatever legal action is necessary. Now, without commenting on whatever President Trump has determined, there are sufficient oversight mechanisms within the US legal system in order to ensure that whatever action is taken is in accordance with the law. But the important thing is that the action has to be taken without hesitation. And here I sense that the university authorities especially have hesitated and are hesitating and need to be reminded. And I think these are the ways to remind them that it needs to be done.
Absolutely. And Jonathan, I want to turn now to you to get sort of a different perspective on the campuses here in Israel. Reichman University has welcomed many sort of displaced Jewish students. How is Reichman doing things differently to keep Jewish students safe? And I'm assuming that sort of what we're seeing with the rising anti-Semitism across campuses around the world is having a direct influence on sort of the number of students now turning to study at Reichman.
Well, first of all, I feel guilty after hearing Eden, Matan, and Shai, who have been in the trenches fighting the anti-Zionists and the anti-Semites. Here I am, safely in a city of refuge called Reichman University, which believes in the Israeli Declaration of Independence, believes in freedom of expression and freedom of speech, in a society by the people, for the people, with a minority in mind, so that everybody can feel comfortable on campus. There has been a backlash in the sense that I have received transfer students from 15 different universities in the United States, from the West Coast, from the Midwest, from the East Coast. From the East Coast, from a large university in New York, which is private, a young woman who showed me her transcript. Her transcript had all A's and 1 B minus. What's the B minus? Her professor was of a different ethnicity and of a different point of view and gave her a B minus. Okay. I, being the non-politically correct person that I am, crossed out the B minus and put in an A, and told her on the spot that she's accepted to the graduate program that she wanted to go to, even without consulting the dean, okay, which is probably against the rules, and the Council for Higher Education shouldn't hear this. But basically, our philosophy is one of Zionism, and we're not embarrassed to call ourselves Zionist. On the other hand, I don't want people to have to come to us as a result of fear tactics. So on the one hand, the people in the trenches fighting the cause, we feel from Reichman University, from our perspective, we also find many ways of making the case for Israel. Many of the shlichim on campuses on Hillel, at Hillel, for example, are shlichim who graduated Reichman and went there. Some of them, by the way, are of Ethiopian background, which makes a great impact, especially when they were officers in the IDF, and someone wants to tell them that they believed in apartheid when they themselves are African Jews themselves. So basically, in many ways, we're a city of refuge for those who want to come to us. And I would recommend to people who are now finishing their undergraduate degrees in the States, if they're thinking of studying somewhere to do graduate studies, think of studying in Israel. I'm not saying only come to Reichman University, although Reichman University has a vast majority of the international degrees taught in English. There are other universities in Israel. Everybody's welcome here. That also includes people of all backgrounds, religions, creeds, what have you. And so we're enjoying our Zionism while these guys are fighting in the trenches. So we're all one, but some of the people who came to me were shamed so badly within a certain context that they didn't feel safe coming back to their campus. I had one person who did not feel safe in their dorm room. I had a student from the University of Barcelona who was actually attacked in his dorm room, in the dorm. So basically, through this funnel, I've met a whole bunch of people who have been impacted. Just know we're here for you.
We're here for you, absolutely. Turning back to Eden and Professor Davidai, what's the single sort of most urgent change that universities need to make to stop the spread of anti-Semitism and protect their Jewish students, and of course their staff? So Eden, why don't we start with you and then we'll turn to you, Professor Davidai.
This is what we've been saying since the very beginning. All we need is people to lead with moral clarity. And I think that the biggest policy change that needs to be made is that we need our leaders to actually hold people that propagate anti-Semitism, that violate university rules and policies, accountable for their actions. I'm not even talking about speech, I'm purely talking about conduct. Students and faculty members that bar Jews from entering parts of campus, that close off gates, that harass Jewish and Israeli students need to be held accountable.
And Professor Davidai, what do you think is the most urgent change? Yeah.
I think Eden takes the right approach. I think it's accountability. Because she's a student, she can't say things that I can't say. We need to focus on the professors. We need to create some accountability for the professors. And by the way, this isn't just about saving Jews or Israelis or anything. When a professor is teaching something that they have no idea about because they do that out of some ideological bias, you are no longer a university that celebrates merit and intellectual achievements. You've now become some partisan institution. We need to create mechanisms so that professors that do or make students feel uncomfortable will have to pay some sort of price.
We're marking Israel's Independence Day in the face of all this hatred that you personally encountered, that many of you have personally encountered. What gives you strength, and what would your message be to Jewish students around the world?
After October 7th, the link should be obvious. When we give the atmosphere, when we allow the atmosphere to happen, that it's okay to attack Jews for whatever reason. By the way, the IRA policy says that there's no difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Israeli. And we shouldn't feel a blame. This is wrong. We should fight it. When we fight it, we can win. Even Harvard and other institutions like Columbia and like others. And we must stand up and we must fight. And I think that many people tie political issues that they might have with the state of Israel to anti-Semitism. But these things are completely separate. Like Ben-Gurion said, we need to fight the Nazis as if there's no white book, and the white book like there's no Nazis. We need to fight to make Israel perfect as if there's no anti-Semitism, and we must fight anti-Semitism as if Israel is the perfect place.
And Jonathan, turning to you, sort of the same question, you know, in the face of all this hatred, what would your message be to Jewish students worldwide?
My message would be that that Reichman University has a huge percentage of combat soldiers. 55% of our campus served in this last war. Unfortunately, 17 of our students were killed in action. We have 120 severely injured soldiers. Seeing their resilience and seeing the resilience of those who are coming out of their PTSD, I feel proud of the fact that we don't leave any reservists behind. And I feel proud of the fact that we give preferential treatment to combat soldiers. So my personal therapy is to be involved in something like this. I can save a lot of money on the psychologist by simply trying to be a Zionist, but also trying to understand where the other people on this panel are coming from who are in the trenches. And they need to know, just like sometimes we in the IDF in combat, we've got those who run against the enemy, the others with the firing to protect them. We call it retek. Consider Reichman University to be your retek, okay? And we're there for you. But we love you guys in the trenches who are doing the job, and keep up the great work.
Absolutely. People in the trenches, Jewish students, unfortunately, we have to say, unfortunately, around the world on college campuses. So we're out of time. I want to thank everyone in the studio and Eden and Shai on Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us to discuss this very, very important topic today.
Our final two conversations are with the heroes on the Hasbara front, social activists and influencers who have taken to the TV and TikTok to share a powerful pro-Israel message. The first conversation is in studio with Alon Levy and Lidar Grave-Lazi. Let's take a look.
So thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. So, you know, you have dealt with intense media pressure, misinformation, global criticism. What's been sort of the hardest part of representing Israel to the world?
Israel is difficult to explain, not only because sometimes it doesn't make it easy in terms of providing the information, but because we're dealing with a landscape that's rigged against us. There are many people who've already made their minds up, and it goes very deep in Western thinking, in the Islamic world as well. So often the arguments that are taking place about Israel are a form of projection. They're not really arguing about Israel. They're debating about themselves and their own cultures and projecting it onto Israel. And so cutting through and getting the truth across when you're already a character in a story that someone else is telling in their mind is difficult because, let's be honest, there are many people who want to believe the worst about Israel. But there are also many people who believe that Israel is on the right side of history. And it's those people we're cutting through to.
And, you know, there has been sort of this global PR battle alongside, of course, the actual military campaign. You know, Israel says it's starting to win the military battle. But what about the PR campaign? Do you think Israel can actually win this war of narratives?
What does it mean to win the war of narratives? There are 1 billion Muslims in the world. Are we going to convert them all to be Zionists and take the pro-Israel side? How am I going to convert the Irish, wean them off centuries of Catholic anti-Semitism and decades of viewing our conflict through the lens of their own conflict with the British? I don't think, you know, there are no magic solutions and no solutions where suddenly everyone in the world is going to agree with us. But I don't think that's a realistic goal. A realistic goal is that the mainstream public in democratic countries will be sympathetic to Israel. And I think that can be done. But it's difficult. It's going to require Israel to step up its game in terms of speaking to the media. It's going to require some very creative thinking about how AI and the new tools can be used to leverage and reach mass audiences. It's going to require the diaspora jury as well to stand up and speak up and be counted. And it's going to require some deep cultural shifts in the West as well. We're already beginning to see some backlash to the cultural movements associated with the anti-Israel movement. And so it can be done. Is the whole world going to become pro-Israel? Probably not. Can we start to shift the needle? Absolutely.
So, you know, you've defended Israel on the world stage, but I do want to turn inward for a moment. You know, what do you think the government has sort of gotten wrong in its handling of the war? You know, you were initially, of course, the government spokesperson, so you have sort of that inside track. What do you think needs to change now?
What I can say from the perspective of the hostages is this. It is blindingly obvious that Qatar told Hamas to keep the hostages. Qatar is Hamas's main state sponsor. It condemned Israel for the October 7th massacre. During the October 7th massacre, the mother of the Sheikh, of the Emir, mourned Yahya Sinwar when he was killed. And in fact, the Prime Minister said in an interview they've been pushing from day one for Israel to pay a ransom that would leave the Hamas regime in power. And I think it was a mistake to treat Qatar as a neutral mediator. In fact, only now that the scandal over Qatar has implicated the Prime Minister's inner circle, the Israeli media is waking up to the nefarious influence of Qatar, realizing it's not a neutral mediator. And I think that we should have demanded, as people rightly protested, bring them home, we should have demanded diplomatic pressure on Hamas's state sponsors to use their leverage to force it to let the hostages go. But no one has ever asked Turkey to stop supporting Hamas, or Qatar, or spoken to Egypt about the smuggling routes that they've benefited from that have strengthened Hamas. Put pressure on Hamas's state sponsors to force it to get the hostages out. The question shouldn't be, what has Israel not done yet? What price should it pay to get the hostages back? It's what price should its state sponsors pay if they don't release the hostages?
What's your message to Israelis, to Jews worldwide as we honor our fallen and celebrate, our nation's survival?
Since the tragedy of October 7th, we've seen the best and the worst of this country. So my message would be this. It's for us to choose. There is a great, glorious future ahead for the State of Israel if we rediscover that spirit of together and volunteering and common purpose of October 8th and come together to build and protect this country. But the alternative of the country, the wheels falling off this place, that's also a choice we can make. And the choice is ours. And I believe in the former option.
All right, well, Alon Levy, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much. Chag Sameach.
I'd now like to welcome social activist and influencer Emily Austin. Thanks for joining us, Emily.
Hi, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, you've been unapologetically pro-Israel on social media, even when it wasn't popular. What kind of backlash have you faced, and what keeps you going?
Oof. What backlash haven't I faced? I mean, basically, in light of October 7th, for me, it was a no-brainer. Like, okay, I'm very proudly Jewish, very outwardly Jewish. I have to, condemnation's not enough. Like, something has to give. And just started making it like my entire personality, basically, which wasn't my intention, but I really went off the deep end with the advocacy, you can call it. For me, it's just standing up for human rights and good against evil. And in light of that, every single job that I had either shunned me, blackballed me, straight up fired me. I was a judge for Miss Universe at the time. I was the youngest judge in history in the franchise ever. And they refused to condemn the sexual atrocities that happened on October 7th, despite my pleas for them to, because I represent the organization. And it's very important for me that they did that. And they wouldn't. And just because they asked me to never reach out to them ever again and cut communication to be entirely. Puma dropped Israel, so I dropped Puma, my brand deal. I mean, I was about to sign a contract for ESPN to do NBA TV, and then I became too political for them. So a lot of things really fell through the cracks. But when one door closes, another one opens. And I never would have thought then that a year later I'd have my dream job, but today I have my dream job. So looking back, it was all worth it.
Now, a lot of young Jews say that they feel unsafe on campus or online. What would you say to them?
It's very easy to say, don't be afraid and, just go out there and wear your Magen David proudly. But the truth is, what's so much scarier than being a victim of a hate crime is being a victim of suppressing your identity. I saw a video this morning in Manhattan of a rabbi getting spit on. And I was like, I'm not going to say what I want to say. But there's a way we can take care of these bullies. We just have to out-bully them. And I feel like if we try to lessen our identity or not, be proud of it or just hide it, I feel like we're going back to pre-Holocaust era where Nazi Germany was taking over. And that's essentially letting our enemies win. What I would tell these students is really, if they hate you for who you are, double down on it. Show them that they don't have a choice but to coexist. There's a lot of people I don't like. for me, I don't view it as optional to coexist with them. The same way we have to live amongst people we don't like, they need to learn to live amongst us. And I also want to remind people, because there's a lot of Jews that are choosing today, after October 7th, to appease our enemies. I want to remind them that the Nazis still killed all the Jews who sold other Jews, lessened their identity, tried to hide it, and helped the Nazis. They were all killed too. So we're not going to let the Nazis win this time. We're gonna take precautionary measures.
But there's a lot of pressure on influencers to stay neutral, especially when it comes to Israel. What would you say to those sitting on the sidelines?
Like, they should just be so ashamed of themselves, because eventually you're going to have children, and your children are going to grow up in a world where it's literally unsafe to be a Jew. And part of that reason will be entirely your fault. Like, it goes back to the appeasement. Do you think that if you don't speak up, they're going to accept you for who you are? Because at the end of the day, you're still a Jew. Whether you're religious, whether you're kosher, whether you're observant, doesn't matter. A Jew is a Jew, you know? And a lot of people are putting their profits before, their bank accounts before. And then I can't help but to think, like, do you not believe in a God? One day it's going to come, it's going to be your judgment. And Hashem is going to look at you and say, well, what did you do? And you're going to say, I was rich. Nobody cares about that. You know, when your people are under attack and there's a global crisis going on, that's when you double down on your identity. And we've seen so many people who have, Bill Ackman, Dan Loeb, we've seen so many people who had a lot to lose, Robert Kraft, and then we see a handful of people who choose to stay silent, and their silence is actually speaking louder. And we as Jews, we feel it, and it feels very backstabbing.
In the shadow of October 7th, we're honoring fallen heroes and celebrating Israel's resilience. What gives you hope today, and what's your message to the next generation of heroes?
What gives me hope is I get to see a lot of things that people don't get to see. Like, I went to Saudi Arabia. I thought I would be so afraid to be there, and everyone would judge me for being Jewish. And I noticed that specifically in the countries where you're the minority, and it's starting to feel like we're the minority everywhere, I noticed that when you take self-respect in your identity, others organically begin to respect you for it, even if they disagree with it. So everywhere I go, like, I never hide my identity, and everybody knows where I stand, and I'm very unapologetic about it. And I've noticed in light of that, people always be very respectful to me, and the respect is mutual. Like, I try not to disrespect any group of people either. And knowing that there is a developing sense of mutual respect does give me hope for the future. For the next generation of heroes, I mean, there's so many ways to become a hero. You can be fighting, you know, on the grounds in Gaza, in Lebanon. You could be on social media speaking your truth. You can be prosecuting, you know, universities like Columbia and Michigan and all these, you know, universities that let their students get bullied. Like, I genuinely believe everyone has their purpose and their path, and you just need to find out exactly what problem you can tackle, and then give yourself the responsibility in making sure it gets accomplished. And if you do that, listen, you'll make your people proud, but most importantly, you'll make yourself proud at the end of the day.
Thank you so much for that message.
Of course, thank you.
That brings us to the end of tonight's Voices of Valor program. Thank you to our extraordinary speakers and panelists who so courageously shared their stories of strength, sacrifice, and hope. And thank you to you, our viewers, for joining us. On behalf of Ynet Global, ILTV News, and Israel Plus, we wish you a meaningful Memorial Day and a joyful, proud Independence Day. May God bless you, and may God bless the State of Israel. Good night.